So episode 22 of Spy Family the anime continues on from the story that was started in episode 21. However, unlike episode 21, which mostly introduced a new character called Fiona Frost, episode 22 starts out the actual mission that Lloyd will be going into with Fiona. Now this corresponds to chapters 31 and 32 in the manga, and it involves a underground tennis tournament, which I found was not as enjoyable as some of the other longer stories that I saw in the manga. The story seemed a little bit ridiculous. Usually Tatsuya Endo, when he goes into the spy side of this series, becomes much more serious than the antics that you see when he's in the family side of the series. However, this one was really kind of ridiculous, and it felt out of place for me with regards to what I expected from the spy side of the story. However, for episode 22 of the anime, I didn't feel this way. And I think this is because of the immersion that I felt from the anime version of the story. Now, with regards to the manga, of course, the writer can continue the story, but you basically read the story and look at the illustrations, and that is what you get. And considering Tatsuya Endo is very efficient in writing the story rather than to go into a tremendous amount of depth, typically, this arc just felt very shallow compared to many of the other longer spy-oriented stories that we have in the series. And the anime is no different with regards to the story. However, I think the anime is taking advantage of some of the additional capabilities that it has in terms of voice acting, music, and the actual animation itself to bring out a much more spy-like feeling in this story. The music actually works really well in portraying a much more espionage sort of situation that you would have expected during the Cold War, and that helped actually enhance the original introduction of why they're going into this mission, which is of course to obtain a certain piece of artwork that is owned by a very rich person named Cavi Campbell. And though the painting itself is not that important to the WISE organization, what it may be linked to is, for it is thought that there may be some information that a certain Colonel Zacharias that lived during the previous war may have put in as code into this painting itself. From what we understand, Colonel Zacharias may have had something called the Zacharias dossier, which contained information of certain potential war crimes that occurred from both the East and the West during the previous war. And so, if that ever gets released into the public, it will be a problem for both countries, and the resulting tension that may arise may actually trigger the next war. And so it has become a mission for Agent Twilight and Nightfall to be able to obtain this painting. Now, the way they plan to do this is to enter an underground tennis tournament that Cavi Campbell hosts, and the winner of that tournament gets to choose one specific artwork from his collection, which of course includes that specific painting. And during the comic, it just didn't feel particularly intriguing, at least from my perspective, especially when you hear that the way they're going to do it is to go through some strange tennis tournament. But once again, with regards to the anime, because you got the music, because you got the animation and the voice acting, the whole thing felt a lot more real. And it is the immersion that I think is important in this situation, and it felt more like an espionage story. Now, the other reason I find this to be much more immersive is because of the fantastic voice acting that Sakura Ayane does for Fiona Frost. As you know, Fiona Frost is a very poker face individual and she doesn't show emotion. So when she's going through the conversation, you're not exactly sure what sort of emotion she's showing. And because of that, she seems like a flat character sometimes in the manga. But in the anime, because of the change in the voice that Sakura Ayane does between when she's in her serious spy mode versus when she's going completely crazy simping on Lloyd, that change was perfect in representing the wackiness of this character throughout this arc. And because of that, I felt that it was more enjoyable in terms of its humor as well as its depth in the story through the actual immersion of the anime. So I found episode 22 to actually be much more enjoyable than I found chapters 31 and 32 to be. And that is just my personal taste, and it may not have been for yourself, but it did make me really appreciate this anime once more. Now, of course, the ridiculousness is still there because this is a weird underground tennis tournament where there's a no-holds-barred sort of situation in the actual tournament itself. It turns out that Cavi Campbell doesn't particularly want a fair tournament. What he wants is to make sure that nobody except people underneath him win the tournament so that he can obtain the profits from the tournament itself without having to give up any of his artwork. What he didn't count on, of course, was Twilight and Nightfall to be in the tournament itself, or should I say the phony couple. And once again, this shows the extreme nature of how much Lloyd is a perfectionist and how Fiona follows in his footsteps because they just decimate all the opponents that come out. And some of the opponents are really ridiculous in their extreme nature of what they will do to win this tournament. Now, on a separate note, we find that Yor is starting to worry about the situation because she knows that Lloyd is going into this tournament with Fiona. And that questions once again their relationship because he's starting to spend a lot more time with Fiona, and Yor is starting to wonder if that means that he is becoming closer to her, which implies that her role in the family may be getting weaker. And of course, this worries her a lot, to the point of once again thinking maybe eliminating Fiona might be a solution, which luckily only lasts for a few seconds. And so this, of course, is going to continue on down the story, and it'll be interesting to see how Yor's issue will get resolved as the story moves on. But what we find out is at the end of episode 22, the escalation of just how much Cavi Campbell is willing to go continues to go up as they start bringing out more and more cheats to help their side win. And we are left wondering how Lloyd and Fiona are going to be able to overcome these challenges to be able to win the tournament. But we'll have to wait for episode 23 for that. And once that comes out, I'll bring out another video and hope you join me at that time. Now, one thing I was wondering, I still think that this will finish in about 3 episodes, so we will have 1 episode left over. However, I'm starting to wonder if the Vogue Anya chapter that happens after this arc is done will actually be included in these episodes, because Vogue Anya occurred in chapter 36, and so if 2 chapters are included in each one of these episodes, that would have to end up being in one of these episodes, and that still leaves 1 episode left. And that might be good, because if that happens, the chapters after the Vogue Anya story is, of course, chapters 37 and 38. And the story that those chapters cover is a very important story that closes this season really, really well. There is a very, very important character that Lloyd will meet, and from that meeting, it really closes off this season to create a strong anticipation of what will happen in season 2. And so now I'm starting to wonder if the Vogue Anya story will be included in these episode series so that the following chapters can be included in this season. And if that happens, I think that will be quite enjoyable. But that's something for the future, and for the moment, of course, we're still waiting for this arc to finish. And so thank you very much for watching this video, and until the next episode, happy anime watching, and as always, Jaya, nice day everyone.